it's Daisy from mywidowedheart.com. Today I'd like to share with you my method of arranging the main flowers and the fillers in a cemetery floral arrangement. First, you want to take your florals and cut off all the individual stems. You'll want to leave them as long as possible. You can always cut them shorter if you need to. These ones here have lower leaves that you cannot just push up the stem, so I'm going to hold on to them and maybe use them later for the bottom of the arrangement. Now all the stems have been separated and cut off at the lowest possible point. I'm putting the floral foam into a regular vase just to kind of hold it steady while I work. You can use any container as long as it holds up the floral foam while you're working on the arrangement. Now I'm going to start with my main flowers, the focal flowers. Those are the ones that are generally the bigger ones and that draw most of the attention. So I'll look for the tallest one of my focal flowers to start with in the center of the arrangement. I usually need to use a wood pick for extra height. The way I do this, basically I work my way down in tiers or levels. So that first flower, the tallest one, is going to be tier 1. The flowers in tier 2 are going to be slightly shorter. I'm going to use 4 of them. You can use more or less depending on the types of flowers you're using and the kind of look you're going for. See how tall your stem needs to be and also calculate in the length that it needs to go into the foam or the length of the wood pick if you're using one. So now tier 2 is done. Now I'm starting on tier 3. Since I don't need the extra height, I'm just going to use hot glue instead of the wood picks. You can bend the stem for a more natural look. I'm placing the stems a little lower and in between the flowers of tier 2. Now we have tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 done. Now I'm working on tier 4, which is going to be the last tier on the bottom. You can of course do however many tiers you want to do and use as many flowers in each tier as you want to. These are going to be inserted pretty much horizontally. The next one is going to go here. So now we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 and tier 4. Now that we have the main flowers done, let's start with the fillers. I cut 4 stems of these red flowers at about the same length and I'm going to use the hot glue for these. I'm going to go in between the second tier flowers and stick it straight in there. This is a bit of a struggle to get them in there, which is exactly why I like to use the wood picks a lot of times. So now I'm gonna go in between the flowers of the third tier and I'll have to figure out the length I need and also calculate in the part that's going to be inserted into the foam. So I cut 4 more stems for in between tier 3. These stems unfortunately are a little bit hard to work with and I was afraid of that when I bought them, but I did really like those flowers so I bought them anyway. But that's something that you should probably keep in mind. You know, like look at the stem and see if you think you might have a problem with them inserting them into the foam or attaching a wooden pick to it. Now I'm adding filler flowers to tier 4, and again on that last tier they're going in pretty much horizontally. So I have all these red ones left, but I'm gonna hold on to them to see if I need them to fill in spaces later on. I'm going to repeat the same process with these grain stalks. Now this is gonna go in between here, in between these second tier focal flowers. It doesn't have to be exact, I just use that as my guideline. So these 4 I'm gonna use for the bottom row, but because they're too short I'm gonna have to use wooden picks on them also. I'm going to be using the 3-inch wood picks on these. I prepared the 4 for that last tier, and now I'm going to stick them in between the focal flowers of tier 4. Now I'm gonna add the leaves, and I'm gonna bend these downward a little bit. Normally I would use fern leaves for the bottom of the arrangement, but since this is a fall arrangement, I'm going to use those tan colored leaves. On these I can actually push the leaves up towards the top. I need a short length and I don't want to waste any of the individual leaves. They're gonna go at the bottom of the arrangement. So now I'm just going to use whatever I have left over to put wherever something else is needed. So I cut 4 of them the same length, and I'm going to add that right around here and going all the way around where it needs a little more. I'm adding a few more things to the bottom. Remember how I had these left over from cutting the stems shorter? Now I can use them to cover up the foam on the bottom wherever it needs it. And I'm just going to use hot glue to glue these on. When I get close to finishing, I'll usually put the arrangement down on the floor to look at it from that angle, since at the cemetery it's going to be low to the ground versus being high up on the table. That can sometimes make a difference in how things look. So now I can see and decide where it might need some extra fillers. I've actually only got these 2 left. I've used up everything else. So now I can add those to the spots that need it. I think I'm going to add one right here. And maybe one right here. So I'm going to do this real quick. The arrangement is done. All you might have to do is adjust those leaves a little bit and maybe fluff things out. And a lot of times you can push the leaves up the stems a little bit more to create more fullness. And it's done. I hope this has been helpful to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe.